We call it people technology.
インテル入ってる。
So Delhi Capitals have registered another couple of points in IPL 2021 at the back of a fine innings from Shikhar Dhawan. They've managed to chase in excess of 180 for the second time at the 1KD this season. 198 chased down comfortably with 10 balls remaining, led by Dhawan's 49 ball 92. This is Maruti Suzuki presents ESPN Cricket for T20 Time Out, powered by Intel. Let's look back at it. Ian Bishop and Ajit Agarkar, the more familiar 1KD sort of game where chasing was favoured and hard for the bowlers bowling in the second innings. Ajit, as good as all that was, Shikhar Dhawan leading Delhi to the 2 points.
Yeah, brilliant again. I think he started it sort of halfway through last season. I mean, he's always got runs. There's no doubt about it. It's just the strike rate or the way he's approached his innings. Even when the wicket's fallen at the other end, he's not let it go away. And just the man in form at the moment. I mean, even at the England series we saw against in the one-day series against England, he was in good form, and he's carried that here. Just the shot-making ability. It's such a good pitch to bat as well, and he's making it count.
Yeah, I mean, it's the second highest successful chase at the 1KD in the IPL, Bish, and it didn't look tough at all from start to finish. It looked like Delhi had that under control.
Yeah, mainly through Shikhar's batting. Prithvi Shaw played some. There was some of his stroke play down the ground that I found very sumptuous, and really holds a lot of potential. He looked confident until that dismissal, not for the first time. He's played that pull shot and gotten out to it. So I still think there's some work to be done on the pull shot, but his striking down the ground, Prithvi Shaw, was good. And Shikhar Dhawan just looks like a man on top of his game. We've seen Ajit guys play like that before, and that's when you know that they're in sublime form. I never thought I'd see this version of Shikhar Dhawan playing with so much power and so much poise. Yeah. We always knew he was consistent.
I like that you make the point of specifying this version of Shikhar Dhawan. It looks like a different role or approach that he's adopted in the last couple of seasons since he's moved to the Delhi Capitals, Ajit, where the accumulators hat has been traded for a player who can either play the power game or ensure at least that he's always going at a strike rate of 140, 150, even if Prithvi Shaw's going hard at the other end, Dhawan's going hard at his end as well, and it's coming so easily to him.
Yeah, maybe it's just the belief in himself at this point. Like Bish said, someone who looks in great form, you can see, sometimes you go through a phase. He started the tournament slowly last year in the UAE. And somewhere through that middle, whether it was a word from the management, whether it was his own conscious decision to try and play a little differently, at the moment, the bowlers seem to have no answers against it. So if you have that game, why wouldn't you play like that, which he's doing at the moment? It's incredible. Again, like you said, even when Prithvi got out, there was no stopping Shikhar Dhawan or the way he approached his innings. You could have easily said, perhaps have a look at or be a little bit more watchful for the next couple of overs. On this ground, you can easily make up, but he didn't let that, and there was never any real pressure on Delhi Capitals or the batsmen who were at the other end.
Yeah, Bish, what's remarkable is going harder is sometimes associated with risk, and it's perhaps one reason why KL Rahul chooses these different approaches. But when Dhawan's playing this sort of innings, there doesn't seem a lot of risk involved either.
No, he just seems in total control. He knows what his strong areas are, and he manages to use those strokes effectively. So he never looks, one of the commentators said, he never looks as though he's overpowering the ball, and more often than not, that is the case. So that is a really good thing. And I think I'm going back a couple of years, and I hope that I'm not wrong, but I remember Ricky Ponting saying, or there was a report that Ricky had to have a chat with Shikhar, and from then on, he started playing with a little bit more freedom and a little bit more assertiveness. So that's a good thing.
Now, does someone need to have that sort of chat with KL Rahul, Ajit?
Yeah, I suppose we had a long chat in the middle of that innings. Look, it's like I said, hopefully it's a one-off, but it's such a difficult ground to know what a good total is, isn't it? The only thing you can say is that Punjab were in a position to get a few more. And whether Rahul could have played differently, I think he could have, because he's in good form. He has got the game to do it a bit differently. And then once you bat in a certain way and then don't carry on, and get out, that's when it looks even worse. So it is a tough ground. We saw 220 almost being chased in spite of Rajasthan Royals really struggling. One guy almost getting them home. So it is a tough ground to know what a good score is, and that's why you've got to perhaps account for those extra 10 or 15 runs and try and get those. Not trying to say that Punjab didn't try to, but perhaps some of the approach at some stages of the inning, particularly from someone who's set like Rahul was, could have been a bit different.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I find harder to get to Bish, that Rahul himself was at the receiving end, knowing that 220 was almost not enough against Rajasthan. And then in the middle comes that game where they've had a bit of a batting collapse. You've got to start wondering why he chose to change the approach when just a couple of games back, without breaking a sweat, he's got a 50 ball 90.
Yeah, I can only assume, and it's an assumption again, I think that I made and that we discussed during the halfway, that the way that the batting sort of got run over last game maybe has had some influence on him. He finished with a strike rate of 120 or somewhere there. I think KL Rahul is so good, as we saw in that first game, that he could, without taking too much risk, score at a strike rate of above 130, especially when Mayank Agarwal is going at 200. It tells you something about the pitch. So, look, I'm sure Wasim Jaffer, who is the batting coach, will maybe just lend an ear to him, because Wasim said before the season started that he expected, as I said before, KL to play more freely. Even if it comes with a couple of low scores, I think the team will benefit. And the other guys, the Purans, the Deepak Hudas, the Chris Gales, if it happens to be a low score, they are going to have to pick up the slack. That's their responsibility.
Okay, let me take from what Rahul has actually said at the end of this game, and that perhaps is something worth getting through, bouncing off the two of you. Speaks of the impact of dew and says that while he was batting in the first innings with Mayank Agarwal, they felt 180, 190 would be a good score, and dew seemed to have completely changed it. Let's put that into perspective. Does it get that much easier to bat in the second innings, Ajit, and that much harder for the bowlers, that perhaps we afford too much criticism to the team batting first?
Yeah, but I mean, dew has been a little bit of a constant at one kid. Of course, you can't count on dew, or you can't guarantee that there is going to be dew or there isn't going to be dew. So that's where you then try and think, if 180 is enough, then perhaps you try and get to a 200, or if 200 is enough, you try and. That day they got to it because of the way they played. And Rishabh Pant said in that other game as well that dew affected them. So clearly against Rajasthan Royals, when Chris Morris hit those sixes. So dew is a factor. Most grounds in India, depends on how good or bad or how worse it is. But I still feel, I mean, 195 is a good score, but at 1KD we've seen, and with the hitting ability that guys have these days, Delhi chased a big score down before as well against Chennai. So scores will be chaseable. So you may as well try and get those extra 15 runs just to have a little bit of insurance. So I understand it's obviously difficult when there is dew. It's like bowling with a wet bar of soap, which can't be easy, especially when you have to execute under pressure, bowl Yorkers or bowl slower balls which don't necessarily stick in the pitch, and it's a smallish ground. But then you've been there before, you know those conditions, so you may as well have a little bit more insurance, or try and approach the innings that way.
All right, Bish, just thoughts on Rahul's comment. Seems to be affording a lot of the issues for not being able to defend that score on the dew.
Yeah, the dew looked, I'll be totally honest, the dew looked horrendous. I remember my first encounter, I think we were in Lahore in Pakistan back in the day, and we encountered that dew, and it was like bowling. We tried to hold it cross seam. I tried to hold it cross seam. It would slip out. When you actually got it onto the pitch, it was just sliding off. And that's kind of what I saw there from the couple of games we did at Wankhede as well this season so far. There was some dew there. So I understand totally how challenging it was for the bowlers. What I would say is at the halfway mark, I thought they would go on to get over 200. Punjab Kings, that is. So again, I think it'll be a learning for KL Rahul and for his team as well, that certain conditions may require them to get an extra insurance on what they do.
Ken, as hard as it is, Ajit, you've done a lot of bowling at the Wankhede. You must have had your share of experience with dew. Can you not practice for it? It's easier said than done to be able to learn how to bowl if you have to be put in this position of bowling with the dew in the second half?
Funnily enough, I don't remember bowling with a lot of dew at one.
Really?
It's a hard question to answer. No, I'm sure there's been occasion there is due, and I used to find it very difficult as a bowler. My foot used to sort of land at an angle, and if it didn't grip the surface, sometimes the sole of your shoe gets wet as well. It doesn't grip the soil, it slips. So then there is no, if you don't have control at that part of the crease, you sometimes don't have control of what happens at the other end because you have no balance to actually deliver the ball. So it's not just sometimes the wet ball. So every time there was a little bit of dew, I had a lot of trouble. So it is not easy, and that's why perhaps you might need to, as risky as it could be, you might need to approach the first innings a bit differently. It is much easier said than done because you could end up with a 175 and that maybe even less than what you scored. But looks like from the evidence that we've had at 1K, apart from a couple of pitches being different, the conditions have been fairly similar, at least in the outfield.
Okay, Simon Dool, one of your co-commentators, Bishes, asked Rahul the question post-match on whether he believes that the ball should be changed mandatorily more often to give both teams a more fair advantage. Rahul responded to that by saying he, in fact, even asked the umpires to change the balls a few times, but it didn't happen. Is that a direction that cricket could go into to negate the advantage to teams under due, mandatorily change the ball after a certain amount of overs?
Right. Let me answer that twofold by going back to a point that Ajit, and yourself were making just now. Again, that experience with the dew. There's only so much you can do when there's a lot of dew out there with the ball. Teams do practice now by soaking a ball at a net session and bowling, as everyone knows now. And you can always tell how much dew is there when you see guys with their rag out on the field and there's a lot of action with the rag. Then you know, as was the case tonight, that there's something happening. Changing the ball has to be an option. I don't know if you can do it every 2 overs. I mean, that really is quite often. But it is a situation where in nights like these or future nights, the dew is having a deleterious effect on the game and the outcome of the game.
Ajit, is that something you welcome? Mandatorily change of balls?
Yeah, but like Bish said, it'll be a little bit tricky. How often do you end up changing it? If there's a lot of dew, it's after every second ball that it goes in the outfield. So that again comes to the discretion of the umpires, and then some captains might feel it was fair on them and unfair on on the others or XYZ. So that it's a tough one to answer, but changing the ball will certainly help because no matter, and it might sound like an excuse from KL Rahul, but it's certainly not easy bowling with the dew or with the wet ball.
All right. Well, that's pretty much a wrap for now. Long story short, just get more runs batting first, right? I think both the bowlers would agree. Yeah. Don't leave your bowlers with anything less. Yes, Bish?
Some guys have to step up. I mean, Mayank came back to form tonight, and I don't think we've talked about how beautifully he played often enough. Great to see him back in form. Rahul is in good form, but there are some other guys in that lineup that need to start delivering now 3-4 games into the tournament.
Get the big West Indian. It's not naming names, but yeah, all right, got it.
They know themselves.
Yeah. Okay, Bish, you go on and have a good game tomorrow. Keep an eye out on how many times they change the ball in Mumbai. We'll get you again on. Ajit Agarkar, we will see you tomorrow with Dale Steyn, where we can continue this conversation about bowling with a wet ball or defending under dew with the 1K. So join us then on Maruti Suzuki Presents ESPN Cricket for T20 Time Out, powered by Intel. The story of Shikhar Dhawan for tonight. He's powered the Delhi Capitals to another 2 points.
We call it people technology.
インテル入ってる